Okay, transmutation is on the mind today. So that's what we're going to talk about. Transmutation is essentially taking one thing and changing its form into another thing. So this is important in terms of emotional processing. This is also important in terms of removing any blocks that are in our path that kind of stand in front of us realizing whatever it is that we desire. So you might be coming to this video through the Manifest course or membership, right? And in that case, we're going to focus on blocks and how to move through them, right? How to transmute any blocks that come up, the energy behind them. You might also be coming here through the Power course, in which case we're focused more just on emotional processing, right? We're just looking at any negative emotions that come up and essentially moving from the processing in the last module into a stage where we're actually able to transmute or release any negative energy or emotions that we're carrying. So I'm going to go through this process. And again, if you're coming from the Power course, the first few parts of this might not be relevant or things might not come up for you at this stage. That's totally okay. Just take whatever works for you, take whatever resonates, and leave the rest, okay? All right, so we're going to go through an exercise. And I'm going to ask you a few questions. And then after those questions, I'm going to have you kind of stand up, move the body around a little bit. And we're going to work through actually transmuting that energy, okay? Now, as far as these questions go, you can use this as a journaling exercise. I know that's typically what I recommend. I don't recommend that in this case unless it's something that you're struggling with, okay? Because what's important for this exercise is to essentially grab the first thing that comes up. I don't want it to be something that's overthought, right? I don't want to like dive too deeply into it. We want to just kind of grab whatever comes to mind first, right? So for this exercise, I prefer to speak out loud, especially if I'm working with somebody and they're guiding me through it. So you can, as you go through this, you can answer verbally, right? Or you can just think of the answer in your head. Okay, so before we get started, let's get into a little bit more of a meditative state. So go ahead and sit however you feel comfortable. You might be sitting with your feet planted firmly on the ground, right? Or you might be sitting, say, you could be in your bed, you could be on a couch, whatever, maybe with your legs crossed, whatever feels comfortable for you, okay? I like to plant my feet firmly on the ground because part of my like quick meditation exercise is to picture roots flowing from my feet into the ground. It helps me feel really grounded and anchored, right? So all we're going to do here is just take a few breaths, a few deep breaths, and then we'll get right into it, okay? So you want to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. And as you're taking these deep breaths, notice anywhere in your body where you might feel tension. And you can move your body around if that feels right. And I want you to continue just being present with your breath, noticing what's happening inside of your body. Okay, and then once you feel that the mind chatter has dissipated, we're going to go ahead and get started. Now, if you still feel like things are kind of floating around in your brain and you're not able to focus, I would recommend pausing here and going and doing an actual meditation, right? But we're just going to get right into this exercise for now. Okay, so again, I'm going to ask 4 questions. I want you to respond as quickly as you can, right? The first thing that comes to your mind, it doesn't matter if it makes sense. You want to jump on the first thing that comes to mind and just run with it, okay? So the first question is, what is your vision? Okay? What is your vision? This could also look like, what is your desire? What do you want? What is your vision? We're not judging what comes up. It doesn't have to make any sense. It doesn't need to be logical. This is an intuitive process. So what is your vision? And I want you to explore, for whatever it is that you come up with, what does that feel like? What does it look like? Sights, sounds, smells. Be as descriptive as you possibly can. What is your vision? Okay, for the next question, question number 2. Why do you want this? Why do you want it? And again, we're not judging the answer that comes up. It doesn't have to make any sense. Why do you want this? What does this bring to you? Okay, for the third question, I'm going to ask you, and again, we want to answer with whatever comes to mind first, right? What is it that you need in order to realize this? It could be, what do you need from God? What do you need from the universe? How do you need to be supported in order to realize this vision? And again, I'm just going to keep saying it doesn't have to make any sense. This is not a logical process. So whatever comes out, you can speak. If you prefer, you can write it down. Or you can just hold that vision in your head. Okay? What is it that you need in order to realize this? And then for the fourth question, what is one thing that would stop this from happening? Again, I want you to grab the first thing that comes to mind, and it especially for this question, it might not make any sense at all. But what is one thing that would stop you from realizing this vision? What is one thing that would stop this from happening? Okay. Now, we're going to move to the next section, and I want you to stand up for this part. You don't have to, but it's more effective if you stand, right? So I'm going to stand and adjust my camera. Okay. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay, deep breaths. I want you to move your body however feels comfortable. Again, if you feel any tension in your body, just go ahead and kind of wiggle it out, right? Now for this part, I like to stand, especially because I like to sway. You probably noticed me do that in most of my videos anyway, but I like to kind of sway from side to side. It helps to kind of like move energy around in this way. So especially when we're trying to transmute or release something, that type of body movement works really well for me, but whatever feels best for you, okay? Okay, now I want you to think back to that last question. What is one thing that would stop this from happening? Okay? Think about your answer to that question. When you think about that, what is the feeling that you are holding? Okay? What does that feel like? So no matter what the answer was, we're going to connect it to a feeling or an emotion. And there are no wrong answers here. Okay? So whatever comes up, just take that and run with it. What is the feeling? Now, is this feeling expansive or does it feel like contractive, right? Where do you feel it in your body? What part of your body do you feel this feeling? No wrong answers. What is the feeling that you feel? Does the feeling have a weight to it? Is it heavy? Is it light? Is there a color? Is it dark or light? When you picture where you feel this in your body, what size is it, right? Is it like, hey, it's right here? Does it expand outward past your body? Does it envelop your entire body, right? Everything that you can think of to describe this feeling, be as detailed as possible. And I want you to take a few moments here to just acknowledge that feeling, allow it to be there. Think about where it is, what it feels like, what it looks like. We're just sitting with that feeling. Okay? And now I want you to ask, where does it want to go? And again here, does it want to expand, right? Does it want to leave your body? Does it want to grow bigger? Does it want to contract and go inward? Where does it want to go? I want you to envision allowing that feeling. You know where it is, you know what it feels like, how heavy it is, what color it is. I want you to picture allowing that feeling to go where it wants to go. If it wants to go inward and contract, I want you to envision allowing it to go inward and contract. If it wants to expand, I want you to envision allowing it to expand, to grow bigger, or to leave the body, okay? And as you're envisioning this, I want you to tune into how your body wants to move, okay? So for something that feels like a contraction, you might actually want to go inward like this, right? Kind of give yourself a hug. Or you might be like this with your hands to your chest. Or you might even want to sit down and have your knees up, right? If it wants to expand, I like to just kind of hold. When I do this exercise, I tend to work with chest pressure. So I like to expand and allow it to release like this. I might put my head back. As you're doing this, you can use music, you can use any form of movement that helps you work through this process, okay? Okay, so you're envisioning that feeling going where it wants to go. And as you envision this, how does it change? Does the color change? Does the form of the feeling change? Does it get lighter or heavier? I want you to follow this vision all the way through until it feels complete. Okay? Again, there's no wrong answer and there's no wrong way to do this. Follow it until it feels complete. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit. So this exercise can be a little bit difficult when you first start. Okay, so I don't want you to kind of beat yourself up if, you couldn't picture the feeling, or you struggled to answer the questions, or you couldn't envision like where the feeling wanted to go, right? That's totally okay. This is something that comes with time and with practice. But I'm going to work through an example with you so that you can kind of see what this process looks like, especially if it's something that you were struggling with, okay? So I actually was doing this yesterday before the recording. I'm just going to use that as an example. And I'll go through all the questions here. So the first question was, what is your vision? Okay, so you want to look at the sight, the feelings, the smells, the sounds, all of it. And immediately I'm holding this vision that I've had for a while now. And like I said, it doesn't have to make sense, right? So the vision for me is I'm walking down like a dirt driveway, and I'm looking at my daughter, and she's wearing this white dress, and there's like trees and grass and stuff everywhere. It's springtime, but it's warm, right? It's warm enough to be wearing the dress that she's wearing. And that's basically what it looks like, okay? And then the feeling that I get from that vision is a sense of calm and peace, a sense of security. One of the things that I can't actually see in the vision, but I know is there, is it's my home. It's our home. It's not the home that I live in now, and I've never lived there before, right? But there is a sense of deep-rooted security in that space. Now, as I'm going through and describing this vision, I know for me that's particularly important. I've always, as a kid, I struggled with home security, right? So I know that that's important. I know that that's something that I'm seeking. So again, the vision itself doesn't have to make sense. The vision for me is I'm just picturing my daughter walking down a dirt driveway, right? But the feeling will give you more information about where it's coming from and what the underlying need is, whatever need it is that you're trying to meet, or the desire. Okay, and then the question, why do you want it? These tend to come up really quickly for me. I run through this practice all the time. So for me, why do you want it? The instant answer was freedom. And that's one of my deep-rooted core values, right? Freedom, instant, like that popped up instantly, okay? And then the next one, what is it that you need from God or from the universe? What is it that you need in order to realize this vision? Again, instant answer for me, it was money. And that feels a little crunchy at first because it's like, well, okay, it's not money, it's the freedom. Like money buys the freedom, right? Or I suppose money would buy the property, whatever. But why? What is it that you need from God? Whatever comes up, again, don't judge the answer, right? Just allow it to come forward. So I'm like, okay, it's money. Money is what I need. I accept that. Moving on. And then the fourth question, what is one thing that would stop this from happening? Sure, I actually don't remember what the answer was to that. I think it was just pressure. I just had this kind of instant feeling of like pressure. So to me, that kind of feels like maybe it's the pressure to make money, right? In order to realize that freedom. Maybe it's the pressure to get it that actually holds me back from getting it, right? And again, just with that self-awareness of, I know that pressure is a big part of like my design. I can see it in my chart. There's this constant like mental pressure to have to kind of figure everything out. And I tend to have a freeze response under pressure. I happen to know that. I'm aware of that, right? So that makes sense to me. The answer makes sense to me, but it doesn't have to make sense. Okay. I just know that that's one thing that would stop this from happening. Now, because the answer for me is pressure, it's really easy for me to then move into the second part of the exercise, because the first question there is, what is the feeling that you feel? Well, the feeling is pressure, right? But it might not look like that for you. Let's say it's something more external. So what is one thing that would stop this from happening? You might say, like another person, or this relationship, or this thing that's happening, right? It's not an actual feeling, right? It could be a circumstance or something external. So if it's not a feeling, That's totally fine. You basically just want to hold the vision of that thing, okay? The relationship or the circumstance, whatever the thing is that you feel would stop this from happening, so that would stop you from realizing this vision, okay? Whatever that thing is, just hold that vision. Hold it there, and then you will start to feel it, okay? What does it feel like? And you don't have to put a name to the feeling. It doesn't have to be pressure or, sadness or whatever. It doesn't have to be a negative emotion, right? But you want to definitely be able to describe the feeling. So for me, the answer was pressure, okay? And I was looking at how that felt. So for me, it was a heavy weight on my chest. About like this big. I would say like a salad plate, right? With rounded corners. Again, doesn't have to make sense. That's just what it felt like to me. For color, like a dark orange, maybe red. I can just feel like this heavy weight on my chest, right? I don't get a sound for it or anything like that. It's just this feeling of a heavy weight on my chest. And then when I ask where it wants to go, the most important thing for me is to identify whether it wants to expand or contract, okay? Now, there are some cases, especially when I first started doing this, contraction would come up more often. It doesn't really come up much at all anymore. But it is really important to recognize that when that happens, when it feels like it wants to go inward, right? Doesn't necessarily want to release from your body. A lot of times that means that it needs to be deeply acknowledged, it needs to be allowed, and it needs to be validated, okay? So we can go back to the emotional processing process and run through that and make sure that we're not skipping any of those steps before we're trying to release it. We need to deeply feel the emotion. We need to allow it to be there. We need it to be validated, okay? And if it feels like you want to contract into that space, let that happen. It's okay. It's okay. It's almost like, giving a child a hug, right? We don't have to shove them out into the world or throw them in the pool so that they learn how to swim. Sometimes they just need acknowledgement. Sometimes they just need safety. Sometimes they need to know that it's okay for them to be here, right? So contraction is totally fine. For me in this case, I'm just using the example, right? For me, it was expansion. So I'm envisioning this plate on my chest, this heavy plate of pressure. There's a bug in here. I'm envisioning this heavy plate. It wants to expand. And I basically just pictured it like it's coming out of my chest, right? And because to me, it's like a solid, heavy form, I picture it kind of almost like it smashes into 1,000 pieces. And it's not like a violent, like smashing the plate, right? It just kind of goes pew. And it splits up into a bunch of pieces. And it's super cheesy, but it basically like turned into sparkles. So, so before it was like this kind of heavy plate. Actually, when I ran through it yesterday, it was like red or orange. And I ran through it again today. It was like a white plate. So the color has changed. But in both cases, it went outward, right? Expanded outward, and it changed form into a bunch of small pieces, almost kind of like pixie dust or something. It was like sparkly, right? And it just kind of went out. And then I didn't feel that pressure on my chest anymore, right? Now, depending on how you got to this video, or what course you're going through or whatever, there's different things that you can do with this, right? Once you move through, if you're in manifest, for example, once you move through that block and you know that that thing is no longer standing in your way, then you might want to look at, okay, what is my next step, right? If I'm not moving from a place of fear, if I'm not moving from a place of whatever that feeling was, right? What is my next step? And same thing with that, just allow it to come up, allow the answer to come through. And even if this step doesn't make sense, take the step. If you're coming through this video through the power course, it might be more about emotional processing, right? And in that case, you might need to run through this practice a few times to really get the hang of it. But essentially, we're taking any negative emotions that come up, right? Or any blocks that are in our path, and we're transmuting that energy, right? Rather than this being something that holds me back or something that overwhelms me, right? Or something that holds me down, whatever it is, this is now going to be something else. It's just going to change into something different. It's either going to be released from my body, so it's no longer my problem, or maybe it stays in there, right? But it changes, it shifts a little bit. And so for those really big, heavy emotions, sometimes it takes a while of running through this process to really get to a place where that doesn't feel heavy or contractive. I don't know if that's a word, right? It might take a few run-throughs to get there, but either way, this is one of my transmutation exercises, and I hope that it's helpful for you. If you have any questions, you can comment on the video or hop in the group or wherever it is that you came from, and we can run through it together. I hope that helps. I love you.